Chapter 342 Teaching her daughter, have you had breakfast? Zhou Ying stood up immediately and asked. I ate 2 mouthfuls. I really didn't expect that King Hui would betray his country. Mingyu said through gritted teeth. Now, her father-in-law and brother-in-law were in danger, and even Zhou Huiming was going to the battlefield. If something happened to him. At the thought of this, she tightened her grip on Zhuang. Zhou Ying saw this and knew that she was worried about Zhou Huiming. However, she didn't know how to persuade him at this point. She replied, don't we already know about King Hu's character? He's selfish, ruthless, and would do anything to achieve his goals. It's not like it's the first day you've met him. However, his ending will definitely not be good. Of course. Even if the emperor doesn't kill him, the king of the northern continent will kill him sooner or later. Mingyu huffed. Are you busy today? If not, accompany me to the Mother God Temple. I have to pray for the emperor and the others. I hope Mother God can bless them so they can return safely. Let's do it tomorrow. It'll be cooler if we leave early. I plan to go to the palace to see Wanning later and talk to her so she won't get anxious. That's right. She's having the hardest time now. Let's go together later. Mingyu paused for a moment before nodding. Just as she felt sentimental, Zhuang and Guoguo started fighting over a piece of beef jerky. Zhou Ying immediately carried Guoguo over. Guoguo, he's a guest here. How can you bully Zhuang? Auntie, eat. Zhuang immediately agreed. Mine. Guoguo immediately put the beef jerky in her hand and turned around. Mingyu was just about to speak when Zhou Ying shook her head. She patted Guoguo's back and said, if you take it, I won't give you any good food in the future. When Guoguo heard that, she turned to look at Zhuang. After hesitating for a while, she finally decided to give up her beef jerky. Zhuang was about to take it when she saw this. Zhou Ying patted Guoguo's hand and said, give your little brother a new one. Did you forget the lychee that your brother gave you last time? Only then did Guoguo willingly take out a new one from her pocket and hand it to Zhuang. Zhuang was immediately happy. He took it and put it into his mouth. Although he couldn't bite it, just savoring it was enough. Mingyu was amused. She tapped his little nose and said, getting food from someone else is best, right? I prepared many snacks for you at home, but you didn't eat them. Smells good. Eat. After Zhuang finished speaking, he handed the beef jerky to Mingyu's mouth. You eat it. Grind your little teeth properly. Mingyu shook his head. Guoguo saw this and immediately handed the beef jerky to Zhou Ying's mouth. Mom, eat. I want a new one. Zhou Ying smiled. Guoguo was stunned for a moment. She took out a stick and handed it to her with a reluctant expression. They're still at Mingyu's, Zhou Ying said after taking it. Guoguo immediately covered her pocket when she heard that. However, she looked at Mingyu and seemed to have thought of something. Ultimately, she took out a stick and handed it to Mingyu. When she covered her pocket again, she realized that it was gone. She immediately pouted and looked at Zhou Ying with an aggrieved expression. When Mingyu saw this, she immediately handed it to her. Auntie doesn't want to eat it. Guoguo can keep it for herself. Try it. This is my new black pepper flavor. It's quite good. How about we eat melons later? Zhou Ying looked at Guoguo. Melons. Guoguo's eyes lit up. Yes, melons. If you eat too much beef jerky, you'll get an ulcer. Have you forgotten that you can't eat anything if you have an ulcer? Chapter 843 Comforting her. Guoguo immediately pointed at the corner of her mouth with her little finger when she heard an ulcer. She had not forgotten the last time she had an ulcer. She didn't even want to open her mouth when she had to eat. Guogua is young, but she has a good memory, Mingyu said happily. When a lesson is profound, everyone will learn. Shouing smiled. After that, the two of them chatted for a while. Zhuangzhuang and Guogua made no more noise because they were eating their snacks. Soon, the streets were filled with shouts, cheers, and orderly footsteps. Mingyu's expression immediately turned solemn. This was the sound of an expedition. Let's go. I'll accompany you to see Brother show off, Zhou said as she put Guogua down. No need. Sending off can only make people sad. Let's go into the palace later. Mingyu shook her head. Zhou didn't try to persuade her anymore. She checked the fruits that Niulirong had prepared, and after confirming that there were no problems, she changed Guoguo's clothes before heading into the palace. The two of them first went to the Empress Dowager's place to deliver some fruits. However, the Empress Dowager was suffering from the summer heat and did not have much energy. The two of them politely exchanged a few words before leaving. They heard the eldest princess and the first prince's cries as soon as they entered the Phoenix Palace. Zhou and Mingyu looked at each other and immediately carried their kids into the place. They saw the first prince and the eldest princess sitting on a sleeping mat and crying. Their nanny was comforting them softly while Gu Wanning leaned on the bed and wiped her tears. Nan, what's wrong with Yang Yang? Why is she crying? Let Auntie take a look. Mingyu went forward and put Zhuangzhuang down. When the two children saw who had come, they immediately stopped crying. They didn't say anything and looked at them curiously. Especially Yang Yang. She looked curiously at Zhuangzhuang and Guogua with her big, bright eyes and waved at them happily. Auntie, Guogua. After Nan greeted Mingyu, her eyes lit up when she saw Zhou enter. We're here to see you again, our cute Nan. Tell me, why are you crying? Who made our little princess unhappy? Zhou asked. She asked Niulirong to pass the fruit to Chuanxi. Cut the watermelons. It will chill us down. Yes, madam. After saying that, Chuanxi went down with the fruits. Guogua, go play with sister Nan and brother Yang Yang. Zhou put Guogua down. Playing, Guogua responded and ran toward Nan. When Nan saw Guogua, she immediately pulled her along to pile up the building blocks. You're here. Gu Wanning walked over. After the two greeted her, Mingyu said, I came to see you because I thought you would be busy. I didn't expect you to be wiping your tears. Zhou said, you are now the mistress of the harem. After crying, you should be strong to take care of all the affairs in the palace. It will also make the emperor and the empress dowager feel at ease. Gu Wanning knew that they were here to comfort her, and she nodded. Thank you. I'll get myself together as soon as possible. That's right. When a woman should be gentle like water, she should be gentle like water. However, when it's time to be strong, you must be as strong as a man. This is how we women should live. Zhou added. Mingyu nodded repeatedly. That's right. Look at Huaiming. We've been married for over a year, but he hasn't even been home for 3 months. If you need anything in the future, let us know as soon as possible. The two of us will definitely help out. If we can't help out, my mother and the other aunts are still here. In any case, we won't let you be in a difficult position. Chapter 844 Climbing up the social ladder, that's right. Just send someone over if you need us. If there's anything you don't understand in the palace, you can ask the Grand Empress Dowager. She's your anchor here. Zhou echoed. After hearing what you said, I suddenly feel much more confident. Gu Wanning smiled. You're a person with great capabilities. It's just that you're not used to suddenly taking on heavy responsibility. You'll get used to it slowly. Mingyu said. Only then did Gu Wanning relax. After that, they chatted for a while, ate 2 plates of watermelons with the 4 children, and played for a while. At noon, the 3 brought the 4 children together for lunch. After the meal, Gu Wanning rested for a while before returning to work. Mingyu and Zhouing played with the children for half the afternoon. They left the palace with their children only when the weather cooled down. When Zhouing entered her interspace at night, she focused on the border. Old General Zhou had already woken up. He closed the city gates, sealed the camp, and captured the spies. They had already found 3 spies. As for the northern continent soldiers who were shouting outside the city, no one paid any attention to them. However, if they attacked, they would be shot by fiery arrows, so they did not fight. As for Zhou Huayu, he had already woken up. However, because his injuries were too severe, he was still recuperating in the Mother Temple. Zhouing looked at the Emperor and the others and found them camping in the wild. Zhouing looked at Zhou Huiming and the Emperor, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. She briefly conveyed the situation at the border to the Emperor before looking at Gu Qingrui. She wanted to explain the situation to him briefly, but she didn't expect him to be drinking with someone. Moreover, he was drinking happily. Just as she was about to retreat. "Marquis, what do you think of the wine my daughter brewed?" Magistrate Liu, who was sitting opposite Gu Qingrui, asked. Gu Qingrui paused for a moment. He twirled the wine glass in his hand and replied, "It's quite good. It's refreshing and very suitable for drinking in the summer. Why don't you let my daughter follow you back and help brew some more?" After Magistrate Liu finished speaking, he stood up and poured another cup for him with a flattering expression. Gu Qingrui was stunned. He shook his head repeatedly and said, "No need. It's just wine. There are thousands of kinds worldwide, and drinking this for one meal is enough. If you want to say what I like the most, it's the wine brewed by my wife. It's so delicious that it leaves an endless aftertaste." The magistrate's expression froze for a moment. "That's true. I've also heard that your wife is not only good at cooking but also superb at brewing wine. Moreover, the rouge and cosmetic products of the Madame series launched after the new year were exquisite. Especially the skin cream, it's great at removing dryness, restoring vitality, detoxifying, and relieving pain. Many children are using it now. There are also all kinds of fragrant balms that are popular here. They are much more convenient than burning incense. Yes, she loves to fiddle with these things. It's her recognition to be liked by everyone." After that, the 2 bragged to each other for a while before Gu Qingrui returned to his room. As for the magistrate, after returning to the manor, his wife immediately approached him and asked, "Hubby, how is it? Has Marquis and Liu agreed?" "No, I knew about the rumors that he doesn't like women but didn't expect him to be so uninterested." Magistrate Liu sighed and sat down. His wife poured him a cup of tea to sober him up. "Forget it. Our daughter isn't leftover goods. Why does she have to be a concubine? What do you know? I've been a magistrate for 10 years here. If we don't act now, when can I enter the capital? But with Marquis and less relationship with the Emperor and Empress, it would be easy for us to enter the capital with just one word from him." Chapter 845 Verbal Order, but he doesn't like Axaner, we can't force him. At that time, if you anger him, forget about being promoted, it's already good enough that you don't drop your rank. This is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. It would be a pity to miss it. How about this? You buy some local souvenirs later and let Axaner dress up properly. Then, you and she will go and send him off. See how he would react. Besides, he is unfamiliar with this place. Ask our son to come back from the academy for 2 days and accompany him. Got it. Zhou waited until they fell asleep before she retreated and looked for Gu Qingrui. He was ready to enter the interspace, sitting down on a chair obediently. Your peach blossoms have blossomed. You must be overjoyed, she teased as she pulled him into her space. If you continue spouting nonsense, I'll get angry. Gu Qingrui said with a fierce face. You have to be careful. I don't think the couple has given up. I know. Oh, right. Is Zhou Huayu awake? He's awake, but he can't move yet. Zhou told him about the situation at the border. By the way, the Emperor is coming along with the expedition. He set off early this morning. Got it. It won't be easy for others to deal with King Hui. Gu Qingrui nodded slowly. Keep an eye on Wanning and her son. Don't let them get bullied, he reminded her worriedly. I will. Zhou nodded. Afterwards, Gu Qingrui asked about the situation at home and at the medical centers. After knowing that everything was fine, the two of them got busy. After they were done, the two of them ate a meal and took a shower together before going back to their rooms to sleep. With Zhou Ying's solemn reminder, Gu Qingrui escaped a trap that night. However, it was not Miss Signers but a servant girl in the courier station. In order to put an end to the magistrate's thoughts, Gu Qingrui sent the servant girl to the Red Chamber as an official slave. That merciless look really scared Magistrate Liu. On the other end, Zhou kept an eye on the palace whenever she was free. She saw that Gu Wanning had already perked up and was handling her affairs in an orderly manner. As for the two children, they played well with the nanny and the Grand Empress Dowager, so Zhou was relieved. 3 days later, Zhou had just pulled Gu Qingrui into her interspace when he hugged her. Zhou was stunned for a moment. She hugged his waist and asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" "It's nothing. I thought I could go back and accompany you and Guogua, but I just received a verbal order from the Emperor today. He said that after I finish my work, I'll immediately rush to the border to be a military doctor and teach the military doctors at the border how to suture." "That's good. This can reduce some losses. If there's anything, we can still contact each other through this interspace. That's the only way. I'll have to trouble you at home. It's fine as long as you're well. Let me know when you're leaving. I'll prepare some medicine, needles, and thread for you." "Alright, I'll go to the mountain to pick some urgently needed medicinal herbs." After Gu Qingrui said that, he brought a basket and went up the mountain. Zhou looked at the border again, but the city gate remained closed. Although the northern continent continued challenging them, their arrogance had subsided quite a bit. King Hui and the prince of the northern continent were obviously getting impatient. They had already sent many people to cross the mountain range to investigate the situation. Zhou saw that the mountain pass was not only guarded, but there were also many soldiers, so she ignored them. As for the Emperor and the others, they were already halfway there, and the number of soldiers had clearly increased by quite a bit. It was likely that they were taken from the various provinces along the way. After making sure that Northern Pass was fine, she began to investigate the situation on the entire continent. She did not expect the western region of Xixia to experience a drought again. However, there was plenty of water reserve at the moment, so there was no panic. Chapter 846 Victory. In the first battle, Zhou took one last glance at the East Continent. At this moment, fat chickens were already everywhere on the East Continent. The number of cattle, sheep, and pigs had also increased significantly. In addition to the fish produced in the sea and the increased production of grain seeds, the people's living standards had obviously improved a lot. In the blink of an eye, 8 days had passed. The Emperor had finally arrived at the border with his men, and Gu Qingrui also brought his men there. The next day, the soldiers of the northern continent, who had already treated this expedition as a child's play, were still cursing and joking casually. Just as they were preparing to retreat, the city gates suddenly opened wide. Following that, a series of shouts and roars rang out as teams of cavalrymen quickly rushed toward them. The people behind them quickly surrounded them like a tide. The Northern Continent general who led the army felt his scalp go numb. There was a massive difference in numbers between the two sides. If they went head-on, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. However, the cavalrymen had already charged over. It was too late for them to retreat, even if they wanted to. "Quick, send the signal." The general raised the scimitar in his hand and roared, "Kill!" He charged straight at the cavalry. When the others saw this, they could only go up. At the same time, a cloud of blue smoke rose into the sky. The soldiers at the Northern Continent gates had already noticed something was wrong, so they immediately spread the news. When the king of the Northern Continent, who was playing chess with King Hui, received the news, he stood up and ordered, "Damn, the turtle is finally willing to show itself. Hurry up and prepare 100,000 troops. I will personally lead the troops into the city." After saying that, he excitedly took off the weapons hanging on the wall and hurriedly ran to the drill ground. King Hui felt that something was wrong. After all, the other party had been silent for so many days. This time, they must have been well prepared. The king of the Northern Continent was probably going to suffer a loss. Thinking of this, he immediately chased after him. "My lord, it's better to send someone to investigate the situation in detail. It'll be troublesome if there's an ambush." "Ambush my ass. There's nothing but a battlefield between the two cities. Even the grass grows close to the ground. With your fearful personality, no wonder you were defeated." The king of the Northern Continent brushed him off impatiently. King Hu's face darkened when he heard that. He could not be bothered to persuade him anymore, so he changed into armor and followed beside him with a large saber. Seeing this, the king of the Northern Continent only glanced at him and did not say anything else. After they gathered, they immediately got on their horses and rushed out with their men. When he rushed out, he realized that there was a one-sided massacre going on the battlefield, and it was his people being slaughtered. His eyes reddened as he raised his saber and charged out. The emperor, who was standing on the city gate, saw the army of the Northern Continent coming out and immediately waved the military flag. Soon, their side retreated about 100 feet. "Shoot!" The emperor waved his hand again. Following that, fog grenades and tear gas grenades were fired at the Northern Continent's troops. At first, the Northern Continent soldiers thought those were rocks. They immediately raised their knives to block it, and some even kicked it away. The crude grenades started exploding in the air. When King Hui saw what it was, he immediately cried out alarmingly. "Not good. Retreat. Hurry up and retreat." At this time, the king of the Northern Continent also felt something was wrong. Because of the pungent smell, he kept sneezing and couldn't even open his eyes. He turned his head and glanced at the army behind him. Almost everyone was in the same situation. He immediately ordered a commander to wave the flag and retreat. As soon as they retreated, the Ming dynasty's soldiers immediately shouted, returning every curse word they had endured over the past few days. Afterward, they immediately cleaned up the battlefield and returned to the city. Chapter 847 The Plan. A bunch of bastards running faster than rabbits. Didn't you all curse non-stop? Let's see who's the son of a bitch. Old General Zhou laughed. The emperor also smiled when he saw this. He stood up and said, "Uncle, let's go back. When we return, we can discuss how to fight the next battle." "Alright, it just so happens that you guys are tired from traveling for days. Let's rest early." After old General Zhou finished speaking, he followed them down the city walls. After returning to the general's residence, the emperor and Zhou Huiming first visited Zhou Huayu. Although he didn't look well, he was still in good spirits, and the two of them heaved a sigh of relief. When Zhou Huayu saw them enter, he immediately went forward and bowed. "Cousin, you don't have to be so polite. How's your wound recovering?" the emperor asked after helping him up. "There's nothing for the emperor to worry about. Mother God's medicine is really good. My wounds are almost healed. If I don't do intense exercise, it'll be fine." "Great. You should rest well and help us manage the rear. As for the battle, leave it to us." "Yes, I will definitely take care of the internal affairs. Let's go. Let's draft a rough plan." The emperor went straight to the meeting hall and called all the people above the rank of general over. He carefully studied the terrain of the North Pass, including every small path. He even learned about the situation on the northern continent. After learning that the king of the northern continent had brought another 100,000 troops this time, a total of 300,000 troops, he raised his head and said, "It seems that the northern continent really wants to swallow my dynasty." The number of soldiers on his side, including the ones he brought along, was only 220,000. In terms of numbers, there was still a huge gap. This is also what this old minister is worried about, so I have been avoiding this battle. I wanted to wait for you to come over and ask how we should fight this battle and to what extent. The northern continent has repeatedly invaded our borders, and they want me dead. This new king is a warmonger. Since he has his eyes on our country, it will be difficult for us to have a stable life. In that case, we will not only defend but also attack. We will beat him until he surrenders so that the border will not be harassed for at least 20 years. Your Majesty is wise." The generals agreed in unison. "Go down and prepare. Train your soldiers well. When the time comes, we will be able to show our great Ming dynasty's power." "Roger that." The generals immediately dispersed. "Have you finished investigating the spies in the army?" The emperor stopped old General Zhou and asked. "Your Majesty, I've found 5 people. One of them was arranged by King Hui. However, I'm not sure if there are any more. Let them be dead chess pieces. In the future, only tell the commander the battle plan before going to the battlefield. Other than that, keep it a secret. Also, the kitchen and the military doctors must be strictly investigated." "Understood. I will go down and make arrangements." Old General Zhou left quickly. After the emperor washed up, he ate and went to sleep. On the other side, the king of the northern continent was furious after he returned. He turned to look at King Hui. "King Hui, what did they throw earlier? Why did it smell so pungent? If I'm not wrong, there should be 2 things thrown. The pungent smell should be made of chili powder. The other is filled with drugs, which is why many fainted." King Hui replied. "Did the Ming dynasty already have this kind of thing long ago?" The king of the northern continent asked again. Chapter 848 Lowering Vigilance. Yes, it was originally created by a couple for self-defense. King Hui said in a deep voice. Later, it came into the hands of my 3rd brother and was made into an explosive. If not for this thing, I would not have been defeated. Why didn't you say so earlier? Otherwise, we wouldn't have been so defenseless. The king of the northern continent replied unhappily. The key was that this defeat was simply too embarrassing. His prestige would also be greatly reduced. Who would have thought that they would use these useless things on the battlefield? King Hui replied with a dry laugh. He thought of something and asked, "Oh right, did your spies send any news back these 2 days? I have a feeling that they've incoming reinforcement. Moreover, it's very likely that they're my 3rd brother's direct subordinates." When the king of the northern continent heard this, he realized that he had not received any news from the other side for a few days. Did something happen, or was there no news to send? No, something must have happened. Otherwise, the news of the army's arrival would have been sent over. Have you received any news from the other side these few days? He asked the scout leader. Your Majesty, ever since the ambush was successful, the city has been sealed. Our people can't enter, and none of them have come out, so we haven't received any news. In other words, we lost contact. Yes, it has been more than 10 days. What are you doing? The battlefield is constantly changing, and there has been no news for more than 10 days. You're not even reporting it or thinking of a solution. Are you looking for death? The scout captain broke out in a cold sweat and stammered, I've tried to contact them several times, but I haven't been able to get in touch. Hurry up and contact them. Remember, regardless of whether you can contact them or not, you have to report to me every morning and night. Yes. The captain saluted and immediately ran out. The king of the northern continent looked at his back and was furious. At the same time, he realized that he had let down his guard because of the Ming dynasty's delay in accepting the challenge. Otherwise, he would not have ended up in this position. It seemed that this battle was much more difficult than he had imagined. He looked at King Hui, who was sitting quietly at the side. Don't you have people on your side? Try to contact them. We must know how many reinforcements the other party has sent as soon as possible. Also, how many of those explosives did they use up today? Otherwise, we'll be in a passive position. Let me try. King Hui nodded and returned to his courtyard. First, he went back to his room and wrote a small note. He went to his room, caught a carrier pigeon, put the note into the carrier tube, and released the carrier pigeon. However, as soon as the carrier pigeon entered the city, it was spotted and targeted. After Zhou Xinghe received the news, he immediately followed and destroyed King Hu's stronghold. After a while, another large group of spies was found. After the emperor and the rest had rested, they quickly formulated a battle plan, as the war had officially begun. When Gu Qingrui and his group arrived at the border, they encountered a battle that had just ended, so they immediately joined the rescue team. On this day, Zhou Ying had just cooked some dried sweet potatoes and planned to give them to the servants to taste when suddenly, Gu Waning's eunuch's son, ran over in a hurry. Madam Gu, hurry up and follow me to the palace. What's wrong? Did something happen? Zhou Ying asked. It's hard to explain. Anyway, the Empress has something to say to you. Alright, wait a moment. The grapes are ripe, so let me bring 2 bunches of grapes for the eldest princess. After Zhou Ying finished speaking, she asked someone to bring the grapes quickly. She also prepared some dried sweet potatoes. Oh. Chapter 849 Relieving worries at the same time, Zhou Ying also spread out her divine sense to look into the palace. Gu Waning was fine when she checked in the morning. What happened less than 4 hours later? She was shocked when she saw it. Gu Waning's face was pale, and she was lying on the bed with a tired expression. Was she sick? She carried the things she had prepared and followed eunuch's son into the palace. After entering the palace, she handed the things to Chuanxi and entered the room, approaching Gu Waning. After bowing, she went forward and asked, Are you not feeling well? Why do you look so pale? It's nothing. It's just that my baby disturbed me. I just need to take some calming medicine. I remember that my cousin knows how to make a kind of calming pill. Gu Waning then asked, I wonder if you have any. Eunuch's son, sigh. I would have brought it to you directly if you had said so earlier. I didn't allow him to say it. There are many old and young people in the palace. I can't collapse. Did you see the imperial physician? Yes, Imperial physician Lu gave some to me. He also prescribed some medicine to soothe me, but I didn't want anyone to know, so I couldn't brew the medicine. You are too cautious. No, the people in the palace have recently been a little unstable. I don't dare risk the child. What do you mean? Shou-Ying asked in surprise. Although she wasn't as diligent as she was initially, she checked at least 3 times a day. But she had never found any problems. After Gu Wanning finished speaking, she handed her an account book. Shou-Ying opened it and took a look. It was full of the list of goods the palace had purchased. However, there was no problem with the quantity or the price. She looked at her in confusion. Don't look at the price and quantity, look at the consumption. Shou-Ying looked at it carefully again, especially comparing the head and the tail. She realized that the consumption after the emperor left was similar to the consumption before the emperor left. However, not only did the emperor leave, but he also took eunuch Qian and his guards with him, so that should reduce consumption. Are all items like this? Gu Wanning shook her head. No, it's normal at the silk embroidery workshop. If it weren't for the fact that they had cut down on the autumn clothing production, I wouldn't have remembered people had left the palace. So, it's because of this that your baby and your health are affected. This is not a small matter. They are clearly bullying me. So, send someone to investigate. If the situation is serious, kick them out of the palace. If it's not serious, give them a warning. It's not that easy. There are spies from every province in the palace. There are too many things involved. So, you know who did it, which puts you in a difficult position. Yes, the people we caught this time are the people of the newly appointed Minister of War, Lord Chu. I'm afraid that after I deal with him, it will cause unrest in the imperial court. You're too careful. It's within your duty. He should be punished. If Lord Chu really caused trouble because of this matter, then this person was not worthy of being a second-grade official. Besides, King Xian and King An are watching outside. Do you think he can get away with it if he dares to act recklessly now? Doesn't this Lord Chu have a daughter, Chu Jiao? I heard she was a popular candidate for the Empress selection. Shou-Ying asked. I'm not sure about that, but he was one of the people who suggested the consort selection. So this matter is not easy to deal with. With your position, you're destined not to be benevolent. It's good enough that you can be fair and impartial, rewarding and punishing clearly. Gu Wanning nodded thoughtfully and instructed Nanny Yu to keep an eye outside. Chapter 850. The person behind the scenes. After that, Shou-Ying comforted her and hurriedly left the palace to bring her a box of 30 calming pills. She also gave her some cream that she had made to replenish her energy. After returning, Shou-Ying deliberately watched for a day and found that there were many rats. There were even 2 big ones and even more small ones. Especially in the imperial kitchen, everyone brought home a lot of things. No wonder Gu Wanning was so angry that her health was affected. Fortunately, she took action that night. Gu Wanning directly led the steward of the imperial kitchen and caught several mice in a row. After a round of interrogation, not only did they receive 20 whips, but they also had to make up for it. At the same time, they strengthened the patrols and warned everyone. They did not pursue the matter anymore. One of the chefs in the imperial kitchen had a look of lingering fear on his face. After dodging the calamity, he found an imperial guard and whispered, "Brother, you've heard about what happened tonight, right? Tell my lord that this matter ends here. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to keep my job." "All right, thank you. I'll bring you 2 jars of good wine when I'm free." After saying that, the imperial guards quickly went back to patrol. After changing shifts in the evening, he went straight home. Only then did Shou-Ying know that this imperial guard was one of Lord Chu's sons-in-law. The second son-in-law of the Minister of War. They had done this in the hopes that the Empress would make a mistake and cause trouble for the Empress Dowager or King Xian, ruining her reputation. They did not expect Gu wanting to act so quickly. His wife asked, "I didn't expect the Empress to act so quickly. Should we find trouble with her in other ways?" "No, once she becomes alert, we won't have the chance to make a move. If they find out that it's us, it'll be a small matter if we lose our jobs, but it'll be troublesome if we lose our lives." "Is it that serious? What do you think? Anyway, this matter ends here. Don't get involved with your sister. The Emperor is obviously biased towards the Empress. It's not that easy for her to ascend. But, sleep." Zhou looked at the Chu residence and found Chu Jiao. At this time, she was sitting in front of the lamp, practicing her embroidery skills. However, her embroidery skills were not really good. She was not much better than a beginner. She even yawned as she embroidered. A servant girl walked over and said, "Miss, it's late. You should continue tomorrow. It's not good for your health. There are less than 2 months until the consort selection. If I don't practice now, how can I have a chance? I don't want to lose to these basic skills." Chu Jiao replied without raising her head. She yawned with tears and continued to embroider. "Miss, you can't embroider anymore. Hurry up, wash up, and rest." All right, I got it." Chu Jiao relented, finally put down the embroidery rack, and washed up. After she fell asleep, Zhou entered her dream to warn her. The dream she weaved was simple. Chu Jian dreamed she was selected through the consort selection through all her outstanding efforts. After she finally entered the palace, she was greeted not by the emperor on the night of her wedding but by a toad. When Chu Jian woke up in fright, Zhou retreated with a smile. This was a small warning. If Chu Jiao continued her sabotage, Zhou wouldn't be so kind again. After that, Chu Jiao couldn't sleep no matter how she tried, even though she was tired. She couldn't understand why she dreamed of that. Did that dream have any meaning? Chapter 851 returned thinking of this, she couldn't fall asleep. The next morning, Chu Jiao went to find her mother after breakfast. When Mrs. Chu heard this, she slapped her thigh and exclaimed, "Isn't this a dream of a toad lusting after the swan? Why would you have such a dream? Don't worry, you're still the daughter of a second-grade official. While you can't be the empress, you can still be a consort." Not only was Chu Jiao not comforted, but she was angered. Was she a toad? Unfortunately, this was her biological mother, so she couldn't refute her. She could only say a few polite words and leave with a stomach full of anger. After that, she did not dare to ask anyone else. Instead, she silently went back to her room to practice her calligraphy. She had to calm her heart down as soon as possible. Otherwise, even she herself would feel like a toad. Zhou didn't know that this dream that had hit her made Chu Jiao uneasy. Instead, she stared at the palace thoughtfully. 3 days later, she was relieved that Gu Wanning was fine. Early in the morning, Zhou was about to head out to the manor when she suddenly saw Tiger and 10 other people slowly escorting 2 carriages over. When the carriage stopped, Gu Qinglin and Gu Qingxi got off the carriage one after another. "You guys are finally back. You've tanned a lot and lost a lot of weight. You must have suffered a lot." Zhou greeted him with a smile. "I've suffered quite a bit, but it's definitely worth it. It's also an eye-opener," Gu Qing said happily. "Indeed, it's really a different life. It's much livelier than staying in the capital. I've also discovered many things worth pondering over," Gu Qinglin added. Servant Shizhu greets mistress. At this moment, Shizhu carried a small bag and walked down from the carriage behind her. Zhou looked at her clumsy appearance and smiled. Are you pregnant? Mistress, it's been almost 5 months. Oh right, there are many gifts that Master brought for you and Miss in the carriage. At this moment, Tiger and the others also stepped forward and pulled out a rattan box from each side of the carriage. Hurry up and enter the residence to have a good rest. I'll get someone to arrange a meal for you. After Zhou finished speaking, she walked inside with Shizhu. Gu Qingxi and Gu Qinglin didn't stand around either. They called out to Tiger and walked in. After the meal, Zhou thought that Gu Qingxi and Gu Qinglin would rest. She did not expect them to go out to look for their teacher. Meanwhile, she checked the things that Gu Qingrui had bought. There was exquisite embroidery from the south, matching clothes for her and Guogua, as well as some high-quality materials and beautiful jewelry. There were also toys for Guogua, such as bamboo whistles, skip ropes, and all kinds of toys. She asked Kuehua to put it away and instructed Chunyang to send the autumn clothes she had prepared to Gu Qinglin and the others. She then rushed to the manor to do her tasks. On a night 3 days later, Zhou received Gu Shengruo's urgent call as soon as she entered the interspace. She immediately went to the warehouse and searched through the many mother temples. Finally, she found Gu Qingrui brewing medicine in the kitchen of the general's residence. She asked, "What's the matter? Why are you looking for me so urgently?" "Babe, hurry up and get a tetanus shot. Heartwarming is seriously injured." "Wait a moment." After Zhou finished speaking, she handed him the shot. Gu Qingrui received it and hid it in his sleeve. He boiled the medicine, brought it to a room, and said to the old general, "Old general, we still have to fight tomorrow. You should go and rest quickly. Leave brother Zhou to me. I'll have to trouble you. If you need anything, just let me know." Old General Zhou stood up and said. He then looked at Zhou Huaiming with reluctance and turned to leave. Chapter 852 August Gifts. After he left, Gu Qingrui first fed the medicine to the unconscious Zhou Huaiming, then gave him the tetanus shot. "What happened?" Zhou asked after he was done. "How did he get so badly injured?" "He was injured when he went to the mountain to guard that position. Because he delayed the treatment, he got infected." "I see. By the way, do you lack medicine at the border? Do you want me to take some from the interspace and send it to you?" "That's good. Now that there's a war here, there's not much stock left. Send some over." "Oh right, also send me some more tear powder." Zhou nodded. She picked out a batch of medicinal herbs that he could use, especially the medicinal herbs needed for stopping bleeding, and placed them directly in the general's residence. Gu Qingrui yawned. "I've been very busy recently. I'm afraid I won't have the chance to contact you much. I'll leave the family to you." "Got it. How's the war going? Any progress?" 2 wins and 1 loss. There are more people over there, so I'm afraid it will take some time." "Got it. Rest well." After Zhou said her goodbyes, she withdrew and began to busy herself with other things. One day, Zhou was doing the accounts when Qiuxiang ran over and knocked on her door. "Mistress, Mrs. Yao is here." "Mrs. Yao? Does she want something?" "No, she came here to send gifts for the August festival." "Ah. We should also start preparing for that. Ask them to wait for a moment. I'll be right there." Zhou returned to the main room after checking the accounts at hand. Madam, Mrs. Yao and Mrs. Yang stood up immediately when they saw her come in. "Have a seat. Is everything all right at home?" Zhou asked Qiuxiang to prepare some fruits. "It's all right. Our family opened a grocery store and sold some goods from the south and north. Business is not bad." "That's good news. You guys can be considered to have established yourselves in the capital." Yes, I'm finally not that anxious anymore. By the way, do you have any plans for Chenglin's marriage? Mrs. Yao asked. Did someone ask you about something? Shouing was stunned for a moment. Yeah, Qingxi and Qinglin aren't young anymore. Someone asked me, so I came to ask for your opinion. Qinglin is still young, so his marriage isn't urgent. Besides, there's still the Emperor and Empress decision. What I mean is that we don't need to care about his marriage. Once it's settled, we can just help arrange it. Mrs. Yao nodded after hearing this. She thought that since Gu Qinglin was on her side, she would be the one to decide on his marriage. It seemed that she was wrong. As for Cheng's marriage, Shouing continued, you, second uncle, and auntie's son need to be involved. As long as you don't look for our sworn enemies, you can decide. However, marriage is a lifelong event, after all. He has to agree to it himself. Otherwise, it will be troublesome if it becomes a grudge. That's true. Mrs. Yao nodded in agreement. After chatting for a while, they stayed for lunch before leaving. On the way back, Mrs. Yao sighed and said, you should go back to your mother's house and tell them not to have any ideas about Qinglin. I reckon that since Qinglin has the support of the Emperor and Empress, he should at least marry a noble daughter. Got it. Mrs. Yang nodded indifferently. After the previous ups and downs, she did not think it was good for a woman to marry a man in a high position, so she disagreed with her mother's marriage proposal. As soon as they left, Zhou Ying, Kuehua, and Qiu Xiang also started to get busy preparing the August gifts for each family. Chapter 853 Southwest Fighting. Half a month later, Zhou Ying received Gu Shengru's call again. She found that the city gates of the northern continent had been broken through, and King Hu's body had been hung on the city gates. Is this battle going to end soon? Zhou Ying asked. It's still early. The emperor wants to take down the northern continent and make them submit. Gu Qingrui said. I didn't expect the emperor's ambition to be so big. He can't help it. He's annoyed by their constant harassment. They started it. Zhou Ying nodded in agreement. Oh right, she asked, why did you look for me? I need more medicinal herbs. There's still a shortage of medicinal herbs. Oh, prepare 2 sets of inner clothes for me. It's tough getting clothes here. Got it. Wait a moment. Zhou Ying first gave him the medicinal herbs and quickly prepared 2 sets of inner clothes. Finally, she prepared a roasted chicken, apples, pears, grapes, and other fruits for him. Of course, she only prepared enough for him to eat. Is there anything else? She asked after giving him everything. Yes, I miss you. Gu Qingrui said coquettishly. Although they had separated before, they could still see each other at night as long as they were free. However, it was different at the border. He had to hide even when he wanted to say a word, so he really missed her. I miss you too, but the conditions don't allow it. Or you can find a quiet place to wake me up that day. Got it. You go ahead with your work. I have to go and count the medicinal herbs. Gu Qingrui hid the mini mother god statue and got up to work. Zhou Ying also left. Thinking of his slim body, she left him some jerky before retreating and looking elsewhere. What she didn't expect was that the southwest side of the country was fighting the western continent, and it seemed pretty fierce. At least in the Ming Dynasty army camp, wounded soldiers were everywhere. After that, she listened carefully to the discussions among the people. Sure enough, the 2 countries had started fighting. Moreover, the western continent had come in full force with many troops this time. The general stationed in the southwest could not hold on any longer and had begun to mobilize the garrison troops from the nearby provinces. When Zhou Ying saw this, she went to the western continent to investigate. It turned out that the Western continent knew that the Northern continent was fiercely fighting with the Ming dynasty, and they had reduced crop production a lot this year due to the drought. This was why they wanted to take the opportunity to get a share of the pie. Of course, if possible, they wanted to divide the Ming dynasty. After understanding what they wanted, Zhou Ying only sighed. She looked at the East continent. Fortunately, they were stable. Seeing this, she told the emperor about the situation in the southwest. The emperor's expression turned grave. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, Mother God, for informing me. I hope that you can help me deliver a letter." After saying that, he quickly wrote a letter. The content was naturally about the deployment of troops. After writing it, he put it away and said, "Please pass it on to King Xian." Aloud, "Take care." After Zhou Ying finished speaking, she took the letter away and left some fruits for him before handing the letter to King Xian. King Xian was shocked when he received the letter. At the same time, he also understood why the late and current emperors held Mother God in such high esteem. With Mother God's favoritism, why would their country worry about not being able to unify the world? After that, he called several officials overnight and discussed it for a while. Ultimately, it was decided that the seventh prince would bring Yan Jiwu and 2 generals along to the southwest. Of course, they also brought 100,000 soldiers from Lord Yan's subordinates in the capital. After Zhou Ying finished her work, she put away everything in her interspace and cooked 2 tender corns. After eating them, she ground some flour before leaving her interspace. Chapter 854 A Spy 1. On the second day, Zhou Ying just sighed when she knew the 7th prince had brought troops to the southwest. She didn't know how the following days would go. It was the first prince's first birthday in the blink of an eye. Zhou Ying brought Mrs. Lin, Qiuxiang, and Guoguo into the palace early in the morning. Before entering the Phoenix Palace, Guoguo saw the first prince learning to walk with a nanny's guidance. She immediately ran over and shouted, "Brother, Guoguo is here." Guoguo then quickly pulled the first prince into the palace. The nanny was stumped and quickly supported the first prince by lifting his other hand. She looked at Zhou Ying and greeted her, "Greeting, Mrs. Gu." Zhou Ying nodded and asked, "Where's the empress?" "She's inside, preparing the first birthday ceremony." "I see, thanks." Zhou Ying instructed Mrs. Lin to stay behind and look after Gupguo while she and Qiuxiang went in with the grapes. After greeting Gu Wanning, she looked at the table full of things and asked, "Wow, you prepared so much for his first birthday ceremony. Aren't you afraid that he doesn't know what to choose?" As she said that, she put a goose egg-sized pearl on the table. "It's just for fun. There's no need to be so serious about it." Gu Wanning smiled and replied. She then started chatting happily with Zhou Ying while Guoguo carefully guided the first prince into the palace. Gu Wanning's face beamed as she looked at them. Guoguo is such a dependable sister, she's already teaching her younger brother how to walk. "Younger brother, walk, no steady." Guoguo raised her head and scrunched her brows. "He's still young. He'll be able to walk steadily after half a year." Zhou Ying replied. Guoguo heard that and gave the first prince the side eye. She didn't want to play him anymore. The first prince wasn't willing to let her go and just hugged her. Gu Wanning saw this and pointed toward a corner. "Guoguo, there's a wooden pony there. You can bring your younger brother there and play." Guoguo followed where Gu Wanning pointed and saw a red rocking wooden pony. Her eyes lit up and she ran over while the fifth prince had to catch up with the help of his nanny. Zhou Ying then looked at Gu Wanning and asked, "How's it been? Is your pregnancy steady?" "Yup, all thanks to you." "No worries, it's what I should do." Soon, Mingyu brought Zhuang along, with the Grand Empress Dowager and the eldest princess behind them. The children played together lively. Moments later, Consort An and Consort Xian also arrived. Everyone who came to the party added something to the table for the first prince to choose during his ceremony. Very quickly, the choosing ceremony started. The first prince sat on the table, looking at the things and the surrounding people, and clapped happily. Gu Wanning had to point to the table and guide him. Yang, look at the things here. Why don't you choose one that you like? The first prince only started carefully looking at the stuff and took a red ruby. However, he didn't keep it and passed it to the eldest princess. The Grand Empress Dowager smiled at that. Good boy, it looks like your big sister didn't love you for nothing. I want one too, can I? Yang paused and took a calligraphy brush before passing it to the Grand Empress Dowager. He then grabbed a jade amulet and passed it to Guogua, whom Zhou was hugging. He also grabbed onto an inkstone and passed it to Mingyu. Mingyu smiled and said, Yang is such a good boy, not leaving even a single friend unattended. Yeah, it's rare for a kid to be this generous. My dumb kid is the exact opposite. He wouldn't let anything that he grabbed onto go. Just as everyone wanted to continue praising the first prince, someone suddenly pulled the tablecloth and flung it away together with the first prince. Chapter 855 A Spy, 2. The first prince was thrown into the air to a height above the head of the Grand Empress Dowager, frightening everyone. Seeing this, Zhou quickly used her divine sense to slow down the first prince's landing speed. At the same time, she stuffed Guogua into the arms of Consort Xian. She then rushed over and caught the first prince with her feet and held him in her arms as she examined him. Gu Wanning came back to her senses and stuttered. How is he? How is he? Is Yang all right? He's all right, not injured. However, we should still call the imperial physician over to take a look. After Zhou replied, she stuffed the first prince into her arms. The first prince also reacted at this moment and cried out loud. His cries were heart-wrenching, and it was obvious that he had been frightened quite badly. The Grand Empress Dowager heaved a sigh of relief and quickly called for a doctor. As long as he was not injured, it was fine. Just as a palace maid was about to run out to report the news, Zhou suddenly took out a dagger from her boot and stopped the palace maid. Everyone was stunned by that. When they saw the dagger in her hand and were about to persuade her not to overreact, the palace maid dodged her attack and started fighting with Zhou. Moreover, her martial arts skills were obviously above Zhou Ying's. If not for Zhou Ying's quick reaction, she would obviously not be the palace maid's opponent. Quick, there's an assassin! Mingyu shouted at this moment. After handing Zhuang to Consort An, she also rushed forward. The palace maid knew that Mingyu knew martial arts, so when she saw that she was about to rush over, she planned to end the battle quickly. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to escape here. Zhou saw through her intentions, and she did not intend to let her go. She quickly turned her divine sense into a needle and stabbed it into the palace maid's tendons and acupoints on her body. With the help of her divine sense, Zhou quickly turned the tables. When Mingyu rushed over, the two of them promptly subdued the palace maid. At the same time, Zhou was afraid that the palace maid might commit suicide, so she stuffed a handkerchief into her mouth. At this moment, the guards rushed in. After they handed the palace maid over to the guards, Zhou said, "She's proficient at martial arts. Just in case, check her mouth first and administer some muscle relaxant before questioning her." "Thank you for your reminder, Mrs. Gu." After the guard finished speaking, he led his men out. "Well, interrogate her here," the Grand Empress Dowager said in a deep voice. "I want to see who has the guts to try to assassinate the first prince." After saying that, she asked the nannies to take the children away. When the guard saw this, he did not refuse. He dislocated the palace maid's chin on the spot. After examining her, he drugged her and set her chin back on before asking, "Tell me what you know. Otherwise, you won't be able to withstand our torture." The palace maid only glanced at him and said, "Kill or torture me as you please. It's so easy to die. We've always believed in giving a life worse than death." After the guard said this, he asked Eunuch's son for a needle and inserted it into the palace maid's fingernails. He directly jammed it in, so it could never be pulled out. The faces of all the royal women present were as white as paper. At this time, Zhou also noticed the abnormality because the palace maid's face did not change even after being tortured so cruelly. She went forward and touched her face, then tore off a layer of skin. "Oh, a human skin mask!" Mingyu exclaimed. Eunuch's son exclaimed at the same time, "Wait, she doesn't look like a person from our country." When everyone heard this, they took a closer look at the palace maid. As expected, the palace maid's facial features were smaller, her eye sockets were deeper, and her cheekbones were higher. No matter how they looked at it, she did not look like a person from the Great Ming. Chapter 856 Sowing Discord. Tell me, who are you, and why are you here to harm the first prince? The Grand Empress Dowager stepped forward and questioned. "I am an assassin from the southwest border, who belongs to King Ning." The palace maid smiled and replied. "You're framing us. That's impossible." Consort Ning retorted angrily. Consort Ning knew that her husband had the intention to fight for the throne from the beginning, and he had prepared a lot. Unfortunately, her father was loyal to the late emperor and did not cooperate. In addition, after the emperor ascended the throne, he did not make things difficult for him and even put him in an important position, so King Ning had long stopped thinking about seizing the throne. How could he turn around and assassinate the first prince at this time? The Grand Empress Dowager and the others did not know if it was true or not, so they could only shut their mouths. Nothing is impossible. Which prince doesn't have the dream of becoming an emperor? Right now, Great Ming and the northern continent are locked in a stalemate, and the southwest is also in a stalemate. Now is the best time for King Ning to seize the throne. The palace maid sneered. Zhou nudged Gu Wanning when she saw this. It was time for her to express her stance. If, because of this palace maid's few words of provocation, the country that had finally settled down ended up in a civil war, then they would really be in deep trouble. Gu Wanning was stunned, not understanding what Zhou wanted. Zhou had no choice but to speak up. "Judging from your obvious big tongue, you must be from the Western continent. I have to say, you've done a good job of sowing discord between us, but you've chosen the wrong target. King Ning is a loyal supporter of the emperor. Otherwise, the emperor would not have passed the military power of the southwest to him. Do you know what you look like right now, you clown?" Zhou pinched her chin and asked. The palace maid stared at her after hearing that. Gu Wanning also reacted at this moment. She could not expose their flaws without knowing the other party's identity. "Bring all the palace maids who live with her here." "Yes." Eunuch's son responded and walked out. At this time, everyone also reacted and began to talk about the brotherhood between the emperor and King Ning. Consort Ning felt relieved after hearing this and looked at Zhou gratefully. Otherwise, she would have been in big trouble. "You know very well whether it's true or not. There's no need to act with me here." The palace maid glanced at everyone provocatively. "Whoever is pretending will be revealed soon. I know that people like you are not afraid of death, but there are still ways to deal with you." As Zhou said this, she thought of the paper and water method that Gu Qingrui mentioned. However, after taking a glance, she knew the women here couldn't take that. Instead, she turned around and asked Chuanxi to find some ants. Soon, Eunuch's son called the 3 people who lived with her over. When the three of them arrived and saw the palace made, they were honest and quickly confessed everything they knew. About 10 days ago, this spy fell ill. After waking up, she didn't eat anymore. She became more diligent and went out early and returned late every day. What they knew was limited. At this moment, Eunuch's son took out a pair of 3-section undergarments and said, "This kind of undergarment is obviously not from our country. At least, it is not something of the palace." Although everyone looked a little embarrassed, they still nodded in agreement. Because they're citizens, regardless of gender or age, wore boxers. You still want to keep quiet. We won't be polite now. When the guard saw this, he looked at the spy. There's nothing to say. Please go ahead. After the spy finished speaking, she closed her eyes and acted as if everything had nothing to do with her. At this moment, Chuanxi finally found a bag of ants. Zhou asked for some honey and quickly made some small cuts on the spy's face, neck, and arms. Then, she smeared some honey on it and placed the ants on her wounds. Oh. Chapter 857 Birthday Present. At first, the spy didn't think much of it, but she soon widened her eyes and looked at Zhou with hatred. Because the taste of ants biting was unbearable. When Zhou saw this, she rolled her eyes at her and said, "What are you looking at? If you do the first, don't blame us for the 15th. This is just the beginning. Use all 18 kinds of torture. I think there will be one that suits you. Since you dare enter the palace to assassinate someone, you have to be prepared to be tortured." After the Grand Empress Dowager said this, she asked Nanny Lu to take the spy away for interrogation. Following that, everyone replaced the things that dropped from the table. However, the first prince was clearly not interested anymore. He grabbed a seal that was near him and did not bother anymore. The Grand Empress Dowager saw this and said, "Forget it. I'm not in the mood after that either. Let's go over and have a good chat." After saying that, she called everyone out. Although they were chatting, they were actually asking about the situation outside the palace and the situation of each family. Inside her room, Gu Wanning was hugging the first prince. She looked at Zhou with a face full of lingering fear. "Thank you so much for today, sister-in-law. If you hadn't reacted so quickly, Yang might have been in trouble." "That's true. That spy isn't weak, and it would be troublesome if Yang had fallen on his head." Mingyu nodded in agreement. "He was lucky that he was thrown high, so I had time to rush over and catch him." Zhou said. I did notice something weird that you brought that up. When the first prince descended, I clearly felt that it was somehow slowed down, Mingyu commented with a face full of question marks. Zhou Ying's heart skipped a beat. She smiled calmly and replied. "Maybe you were scared at that time. Sometimes, when people are scared, they perceive things differently. Maybe. But no matter what, this is a good thing. Go find 1 or 2 people who know martial arts to accompany the 2 children later." Mingyu looked at Gu Wanning and suggested. "By the way, didn't you train 10 female soldiers?" Zhou asked. "What are they doing now?" "I sent them to take care of my estate and dowry." Mingyu understood what she meant and said, "They'll transfer 4 back to protect the 2 children. You don't have enough. I'll find someone to specially train a few later." Gu Wanning shook her head at her suggestion. "It's fine for a short while. You can use them for now. When your people are trained, you can return them to me." "Thanks. Don't mind if I do." Gu Wanning thanked Mingyu. After a meal, Zhou handed Gu Wanning a small box after everyone had dispersed. "This is a birthday present I specially prepared for Yang. You can keep it for him." "What is it?" Gu Wanning asked. "It's for Yang's pocket money." "You're really giving it to him?" He's just a child. How can he spend so much? You spend it if he can't, so don't reject it. It's better to nurture some confidence quickly. Otherwise, once a new consort enters the palace, you will be in a passive position. I got it. Oh, right, how's Qinglin? He's doing pretty well in school. I'll keep an eye on his day-to-day. Don't worry. I'll leave him to you, sister-in-law. Gu Wanning nodded. After Zhouing left, she opened the box and took a look. Not only were there 10,000 taels of silver in notes, but there were also some silver hairpins, silver rings, silver earrings, silver coins, and other silver-made products. There was even a box of golden melon seeds. Gu Wanning teared up when she saw this. She thought of what Zhouing had suggested before and immediately called Eunuch's son over. She asked him to contact the Emperor's guards to train 4 female guards who knew martial arts to come in and protect the first prince and the eldest princess. Chapter 858. Even more ruthless than Nanny Rong on the other end. After Zhouing left the palace, she looked around curiously and found Nanny Lu and the spy. At this moment, the spy had been stripped naked, and her body was covered in honey. Of course, there were also ants crawling all over him. There were even many needles on her head and hands. Nanny Lu was sitting opposite her, staring at the spy's every move. As long as she dared move an inch, even if she frowned, she would be pricked by Nanny Lu. Tsk, she's even more ruthless than Nanny Rong, sighed Zhouing. Mommy, who is Nanny Rong? Guoguo raised her head and asked. A bad person. She specializes in pricking disobedient children with needles. Zhouing said. Bad person, Guoguo doesn't want Nanny Rong. Guoguo immediately shouted. Yes, bad person. As long as Guoguo is obedient and studies hard, she won't be able to see Nanny Rong. Guoguo will be a good girl. Guoguo nodded repeatedly. Yes, Guoguo is a good child. After Zhouing finished speaking, she gently kissed her on the forehead. When they got home, Zhouing fed Guoguo some water and asked Mrs. Lin to bring her down. While she drank her tea, she paid attention to the movements of the spy in the palace. In the end, the spy couldn't take it anymore. She confessed that she was sent by the Western continent and told them how she'd entered the palace. It turned out that the palace maid she had replaced was a local in the capital. During the disaster years, she entered the palace to avoid starving to death. Over the years, she would go back to visit from time to time, and she was replaced by the spy just recently. As for who her master was, she refused to say anything. She took the opportunity to crash into the wall and die by having the needles on her head pierced into her skull. Mistress, Gu Zheng, Manager Gu requests an audience. Qiuxiang came in and informed Zhouing. Let him go to the study. Yes. Qiuxiang responded and turned to leave. After Zhouing finished her tea, she got up and went to the study. As soon as she sat down, Qiuxiang brought Gu Jing over. Greetings, mistress. Gu Qing stepped forward and bowed. Have a seat. Qiuxiang will make a cup of tea. No need, I'm not thirsty. Gu Jing waved her hand. What's the matter? Zhouing waved at Qiuxiang for her to retreat and asked Gu Jing. The workshops and shops in the capital have stabilized, and a large portion of our soaps have been sold to other places. So I intend to start expanding. Sure, but you must prevent the recipe from being leaked. Also, you must not make things difficult for others. Of course, if they started it, you don't have to be polite. Yes, I will remember your teachings. I will send 10 guards to follow you and help you run errands. At the same time, when you're in another place, you might also develop some manpower. After all, when you're in their territory, you must retain the ability to protect yourself. Thank you, mistress. I understand. Alright, if there's anything you can't solve, just tell me. Sorry to disturb you when you're busy. I'll take my leave now. After Guqing finished speaking, she turned around and walked out. After she left, Zhou practiced her calligraphy in the study room. She later went to her small laboratory and took 2 cucumbers to try to make a skin tonic. At night, after entering her interspace, Zhou thought of the spy and went straight to the Western continent. It was a pity that she could not find the spy's master. Instead, she found that the Western continent was getting anxious because the rations were not enough. Thus, they planned to send people to the Great Ming to poison their wells and rivers. Zhou was furious after hearing this. War was war, as the world was always divided. She did not want to interfere, and she would not. However, using such despicable methods was too much. Chapter 859 Disappearing into thin air. Therefore, she struck the person with a lightning bolt and stored all the poison they had prepared in her interspace. With a bolt of lightning, one of the Western continent strategists was struck into a pile of black charcoal. He fell straight to the ground and spat out a mouthful of black smoke, frightening everyone. It also caused a commotion. The general of the Western continent heard the commotion and immediately ran over. He was shocked to see the miserable state of the strategist. He quickly asked, "What happened? Why was he struck by lightning while sitting in the room?" The soldier who served the strategist immediately went forward and bowed. "General, I'm not sure either. I just saw a bolt of lightning suddenly rush in from the window. Then, he ended up like this." After hearing this, the general went forward to check. After confirming that the strategist was still alive, he heaved a sigh of relief and then asked someone to help him to a bed. "General, the poison that I prepared earlier has disappeared into thin air," a soldier ran in and reported. "What do you mean by disappearing into thin air?" The general turned his head and asked in confusion. "It just disappeared into thin air. We just watched it disappear." The soldier replied in panic. To be honest, if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. Moreover, in order to make sure that his eyes were not playing tricks on him, he had specially checked and found someone to verify it. The many vats of poison were gone just like that. The general finally panicked. He had heard before that people in the Great Ming had been struck by lightning for no reason several times. Moreover, every time it was Mother God who showed her might, the ones struck were all evil people, or rather, people like King Hui who mistreated human lives. Thinking of this and connecting it to the disappearance of the poison, he finally understood. There was an 80% chance that this was really a punishment from Mother God to prevent them from poisoning a large area. However, given the current situation, would they have to continue wasting time like this? The general was in a dilemma. When the military doctor arrived, the general also helped with the treatment. He went to find the deputy general and the strategists and told them about the matter. It seems that using poison won't work. If you all have any other ideas, you can say it. Isn't this Mother God getting a little out of her reach? A deputy general asked. Don't be rude. The general replied in a bad mood. I agree with Mother God's decision, the military advisor replied. Using poison is too harmful. It will also kill many innocent people and livestock. You're too kind, the deputy general huffed. Alright, no matter what, without the poison, it won't work. Everyone, hurry up and think about what to do, the general said. What can we do? In the beginning, we only had an advantage in numbers and initiative. Now, these advantages are all gone. In addition, the local people are also against us. Unless we double the number of soldiers, I'm afraid there's no room for victory, the deputy general replied. I'll take a look at this matter. We should ask the higher-ups for their opinion. If they want to fight, they'd quickly send reinforcements and rations over. Otherwise, we will be forced to stop fighting. Stop the war. How is that possible? It had already reached this stage. If we stop the war again, we will have to compensate the Great Ming. The national treasury doesn't have any money. The general replied with a troubled expression. After that, he glanced at the map on the table. The passages that they could enter were all sealed, and there was no chance at all. In the end, he gritted his teeth and proposed, if you want to round up a gang, you must get its chief first. What do you think of capturing King Ning? Chapter 860 Lost Weight Again. The idea is not bad, but it's not easy to realize. The military advisor replied. We can only cooperate from the inside out, the general replied. The others looked at him in surprise and fell silent. This way, the spies they had hidden in the enemy's camp would probably be unable to last. This was not a smart idea. I wonder if the thousand-faced killer has succeeded. If she has succeeded, we can make use of her. The deputy general sighed. It's hard to say. Everyone, go down and pick a few smart and all-round scouts. If there's still no way out, we can only try to capture King Ning. After the general finished speaking, he sent a memorial to the emperor and asked for his opinion. At the same time, King Ning also received a letter from the emperor. After reading it, he was overjoyed. That's great. The emperor has already invaded the northern continent and taken the head of their king. He will reach the capital in a few days. He immediately called his generals over and told them the news. Did the emperor order us to attack the western continent? Yan Jiwu asked. No, but he asked us to prepare food and medicine. King Ning said. Everyone knew that there was a chance when they heard that. They rubbed their fists and got ready. After Zhou heard this, she turned to the northern continent. Sure enough, she found Gu Qingrui and his people stationed in their largest city besides the capital. When she found him, he was changing the dressing of an injured person. You've lost weight again, Zhou said after Gu Qingrui finished his work and returned to his room. Gu Qingrui paused momentarily before replying, but you're living a fulfilling life. How's the family? Are you doing well? Pretty good. It's just that the Western continent's ambitions are a little too big. After Zhou finished speaking, she told him about the assassination attempt of the first prince. Gu Qingrui did not know what to say after hearing that. With the first prince's current status, he was destined to be in constant danger. He just hadn't expected someone to come to the palace to make a move. He replied, keep a close eye on him. All right. It's getting cold over there. What is the emperor thinking? Does he want to fight all the way to the capital? He does have this intention. He intends to assist a puppet king to ascend the throne and take the northern continent as a vassal state. That's pretty good. Do you need anything? Give me 2 more sets of inner clothes. It's too cold here. After washing clothes for a day or 2, they won't dry at all. Do you want to take a bath? I'll keep an eye on you. Yes, please, I'll take a rest tomorrow anyway. Gu Qingrui immediately replied. He hadn't bathed for almost 2 months and felt he could get half a pound of mud off his body. After that, he disguised himself and closed the window. He hugged his dirty clothes and said, I'm ready. Zhou saw this and took him in. She saw his chapped face and smiled. Hurry up and go take a bath. Put on a facial mask later. Got it. Remember to give me my clothes tomorrow morning. After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he carried the dirty clothes back to the villa. After a quick shower, he ate an apple and started washing his clothes with a washing machine. He even took the time to go to the bedroom to check on Guogua. Looking at his daughter, who had grown up a lot, Gu Qingrui felt a little guilty. However, when he thought of the soldiers struggling at the border, he could only kiss Guoguo's forehead and turn around to leave. When his hair was dry, the clothes he washed earlier were also done drying. He immediately changed a set of inner clothes and went to the warehouse door to find Zhou. He hugged her and kissed her. "Babe, I missed you so much." Chapter 861 A Dream, 1, Come on. Zhou pushed his head away and said, "What do you want to eat?" "I'll get it for you." She turned around and asked. As soon as she said this, she was pulled into his arms. Before she could come back to her senses, Gu Qingrui kissed her. Zhou was stunned but quickly raised her hand and wrapped it around his neck as she responded. As they kissed, someone took off their clothes first, and soon the two of them were entangled. After a while, Zhou saw that he still wanted more, so she immediately stopped him. "Stop fooling around. You're so busy now. It's better to conserve your strength." "Ah, fine." Gu Qingrui kissed her reluctantly. "Give me a durian. I haven't eaten it for a long time." "No problem. Head on back first." Zhou picked out a durian from the storeroom and took out a plate of strawberries. Then, the two returned to the villa and ate some fruit. After Guoguo woke up from holding her pee, she saw the unfamiliar environment. She was stunned for a moment and cried. "Mommy, Mommy." "Guoguo is scared." Zhou was shocked to hear her cries. After confirming that Guoguo had woken up, she took a fist-sized strawberry into the bedroom and sat by the bed. "Don't be afraid. Mommy is here. Does Guoguo like this?" When Guoguo saw it, she was immediately attracted by the red and fruity strawberry. She took a bite and quickly finished it. She looked around and said, "Mommy, where is this? It stinks." "In a dream. You forgot that you were asleep." Zhou picked her up and said. "In my dream?" Guoguo looked at her with a face full of question marks. "Yes, we're in your dream." After Zhou finished speaking, she took her to the toilet and carried her out. Guoguo was stunned when she saw Gu Qingrui. "Daddy." Sigh, my lovely daughter actually still recognizes her father. Gu Qingrui quickly put the durian in his hand into his mouth and stretched out his hand. "It stinks." Guoguo turned her head. Gu Qingrui was instantly sheepish. He broke off a durian fruit and handed it to her. "It's not Daddy who stinks. It's this fruit that stinks. However, it's very delicious. Try it." Although Guoguo liked the look of the yellow durian, she still pushed it away when she smelled it. Although Zhou didn't like it, she knew it was delicious. She advised, "Guoguo, you can try it. If you don't like it, we won't eat it in the future." After Guoguo heard this, she thought of the story of the pony crossing the river. In the end, she took it and tried to take a bite. Soon, her eyes lit up, and she started wolfing it down. Gu Qingrui was delighted when he saw this. He hugged her and said, "As expected of my daughter, she has the same preference as me." After saying that, he sat down and hugged her as he ate. "Just have enough," Zhou said. "It's late at night. If she eats too much, she'll have a stomachache." After saying that, she sat down and ate the strawberries. "Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on her." Gu Qingrui nodded. After Guoguo finished a piece of durian, he didn't give it to her anymore. Instead, he took her to rinse her mouth and coaxed her to go to sleep. After she fell asleep, Gu Qingrui went back to the bathroom to wash up. "Send me back. It won't be good for me to stay here for too long." "Okay, think about what you want to eat, and I'll send it to you tomorrow." After Zhou finished speaking, she walked out with him. "Bring me some chrysanthemum tea." There's a heated brick bed over there, and it's dry. Alright, I'll bring you a few pairs, too. Sure, but not too much. Otherwise, it'll be hard to explain where they came from. After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he kissed her again and said, Alright, send me away. Chapter 862 A Dream, 2. Zhou Ying soon sent him back and then went to do her own thing. After she was done, Gu Shengruo's clothes were also dried. She packed them up and prepared some chrysanthemum tea and pears for him. She brought Guoguo out of the space afterward. When he woke up the next morning, Guoguo glanced around the room and nudged Zhou Ying. Mommy, where's Daddy? Daddy? Zhou Ying was stunned. What Daddy? Isn't your daddy not at home? Guoguo obviously didn't believe her. She had clearly seen her father, so she shouted for Gu Qingrui loudly. However, Gu Qingrui was nowhere to be seen, so she immediately pouted and started crying. Mrs. Lin ran over. When she saw Guoguo crying, she immediately coaxed her. What's wrong, miss? Are you dreaming? She probably dreamed of Qingrui. She called for him the moment she opened her eyes. After Zhou Ying finished speaking, she stood up and helped Guoguo put on her clothes. Mrs. Lin helped her put on her boots as she said, Miss, do you miss Master? But Master is really not at home. He is fighting with the Emperor outside. He's at home, Guoguo said with a straight face. She'll give up if you take her to look for him, Zhou Ying said when she saw that Mrs. Lin still wanted to persuade her. Mrs. Lin did not try to persuade Guoguo anymore. She dressed her up in thick clothes and carried her out. When it was time to eat, although Guoguo was still unhappy, she didn't make any more noise. It was obvious that she had admitted that she was dreaming. 10 days later, the Emperor finally led his men into the capital of the northern continent. At night, the Emperor called all the generals, including Gu Qingrui, into the room. Tell me, how can we better control the northern continent? He asked. Set up an embassy, detain hostages, and have our people monitor every level of the government office. The heir of King Xian said. Although this method is good, it is easy to cause the people of the northern continent to rebel. When they kill all of our people, it will not be worth it. The heir of King An replied. In my opinion, there's no need for that. Open the pass, trade with each other. At that time, we can just hold the initiative in our hands. Heartwarming said. There's still a way. The northern continent mainly relied on livestock, so the annual grain production was not high. If they want to eat food, especially rice and wheat, they have to buy it from our country. Old General Zhou echoed. Qingrui, what do you say? The Emperor looked at Gu Qingrui. In fact, Brother Zhou can directly open grain stores and restaurants on the northern continent. This way, the people of the northern continent won't be too rebellious, and it will be better for us to monitor them. We must also leave some people here to restrain the local officials. The other is a bank. If we can open a bank, we can better restrain them financially. Come on. I'm already so busy that my feet don't touch the ground. Why are you adding to my burden? Heartwarming glared at him. You can find more stewards. Have you seen the Emperor running around every day? Gu Qingrui said. The Emperor nodded thoughtfully and pondered, food and money. Food is easy to control, but money is hard to say. Indeed, the people of the northern continent, especially the herdsmen at the bottom, are still bartering. I'm afraid the use of the money house is not very big. However, food and restaurants are still a solution. Especially the restaurants, they can be used as a base to gather information. Old General Zhou added. Is there more? The Emperor asked again. If we're talking about spying, I think inns and brothels are more suitable. The heir of King An spoke up. Chapter 863 Triumphant Return. Although the emperor agreed with his words, he really didn't want to open brothels here. He felt that it was too cruel to women. He spoke up, "I understand everyone's suggestion. After returning to the Great Ming, we will consider it carefully. Now, let's discuss how much the northern continent should pay tribute each year. Like the various prefectures of Great Ming, how about taking IO%? Old General Zhou suggested. At least 8%. Heartwarming nodded. 10% isn't high, but it's not low either. If it's any higher, they'll definitely resist. The heir of King An nodded in agreement. This 10% doesn't have to be limited to silver. For example, the fur that our Great Ming lacks, unique medicinal herbs, and various mineral resources could be considered. Gu Qingrui added. Alright, since everyone has agreed, we'll negotiate with the king of the northern continent tomorrow. Over the next 2 days, both parties signed the subsidiary agreement with a tax of 10%. At the same time, the emperor also agreed to exchange corn seeds, sweet potato seeds, and chili peppers for them. At the same time, the emperor also obtained some unique potato seeds. After that, the emperor and his entourage stayed for about 10 days, waiting for the new king of the northern continent to stabilize his reign. The emperor and his entourage quickly returned to Great Ming after that. At the same time, the trade between the two sides was wholly opened. A local deputy general was left to guard the city, while the emperor quickly returned to the capital with old General Zhou, Zhou Huayu, and the others. At the same time, a pigeon sent a letter to the southwest, saying they could start a war now. After a while, the heirs of King An and King Xian led 50,000 troops, as well as the rations, herbs, and military doctors that Gu Qingrui had trained, to the southwest. At the same time, the great general of the western continent received a reply from their king, requesting that they continue fighting. As for their plan to capture King Ning, they had almost succeeded. Fortunately, the poisoning of old General Zhou had aroused the high vigilance of King Ning and the others, so they discovered and caught the spies lurking in their military camp in time. After King Ning learned of their plan, he was filled with anger. Therefore, they stocked up on grain, medicinal herbs, or people. The two sides instantly started fighting when the western continent's army appeared. When the son of King An and the others arrived, King Ning and the others had already opened the gates to the border of the western continent. After the two sides met up, everyone attacked the capital of the western continent. At the end of the year, on the 28th day, they captured the king of the western continent alive. With the emperor's decree, the heirs of King Xian and King An quickly supported a prince who was not on good terms with the king of the western continent to ascend the throne. The group returned to the border, with King Ning and the others returning to the capital with the same agreement as the northern continent. On the other end, when the emperor and the others returned to the capital, it was already close to the 12th lunar month. Meanwhile, Shouing began to prepare her New Year's gift for everyone. On one day, Shouing went to deliver the New Year's gift to King An's imperial residence. She had just returned and sat down when Niu Fugue came to report. Mistress, the emperor and the others have already arrived at the 10-mile pavilion. They are about to enter the capital. So fast. Quickly, get someone to prepare a brazier to welcome Qingrui. Shouing stood up and urged. Yes, I'll make the arrangements now. Niu Fugue nodded. After he left, Shouing got someone to prepare a bath and even took out a set of new clothes for Gu Qingrui. At the same time, the soldiers cleared the streets, and everyone received the news. Therefore, the streets on both sides were quickly filled with excited people. Following that, the officials quickly arrived at the city gate under the lead of King Xian. As soon as the emperor and the others approached, the soldiers at the city gates immediately knelt and shouted, "Long live our emperor! Long live! Long live!" Immediately after, the officials knelt and said, "Welcome back, Your Majesty, long live our Emperor. Long live. Long live. Chapter 864. Understanding. The citizens on both sides kneeled down and shouted, "Welcome back, Your Majesty. Long live the Emperor. Long live. Long live." The Emperor was quite excited when he heard the cheers. The cheers were way louder and clearer when he ascended the throne. It seemed that people's hearts were now clear and pure. Even if you ascend the throne and become the Emperor, if you don't do anything, people won't really recognize you. He dismounted and said, "Everyone, please rise. I am here to thank you, dear ministers, and the people for your support in the rear. Let us build together a more prosperous and respectable Great Ming. My Emperor is wise." King Xian bowed. Everyone shouted, "Long live our Emperor. Long live Your Majesty. Long live. Long live." The shouts got louder and louder, lingering in the sky above the capital for a long time. Not to mention the people in the capital, even those in the suburbs heard it clearly. The Emperor felt that he had grown a lot taller suddenly. At the same time, he also felt that the burden on his body had gotten heavier. He led the civil and military officials to the imperial palace amidst the crowd's cheers. When they arrived at the palace gate, they were welcomed by the royal family, including the Grand Empress Dowager, Gu Wanning, and the two children. After a round of greetings, the Emperor stepped forward and picked up the first prince and the eldest princess. He kissed each of them and carried them inside. However, they did not walk far before he returned them to the nanny. He said to the Grand Empress Dowager and Gu Wanning, "Imperial Grandmother, Wanning, take the children back first. After settling the matters in court, let's have dinner together tonight. I know you have important matters to attend to." "All right, well, go back first," the Grand Empress Dowager said. After that, she brought the three of them back to the harem. After the Emperor gathered all the officials, he only officially announced the signing of the surrender treaty agreement from the northern continent. After asking about the matters in the court and confirming that there were no major matters, they dispersed. Everyone immediately surrounded the Zhou family's father and son, as well as Gu Qingrui, and asked them about the details of the situation. However, they were quite tired, so everyone only asked a few rough questions and let them go back. The eldest son of the Zhou family is not young anymore. "He must be 30 years old," said King Xian after they had walked far away. "Almost 30. If nothing had happened to the Zhou family back then, his child would have been over 10 years old." King An added. "I'm sure the Zhou family is going to be lively soon," King Xian commented. King An was stunned for a moment before he understood what he meant. Zhou Huaiyu wasn't too old. Now that he had no wife and children and had made an outstanding contribution, matchmakers would probably try their best to squeeze through the Zhou family's household. It seemed that he had to inform his daughter that she shouldn't get involved in this matter. Many of the officials heard their discussion and began to ponder silently. Especially those who didn't want to send their daughters to the palace as consorts, many of them had their eyes on Zhou Huaiyu. On the other end, Gu Qingrui had just walked to the door when Niu Fugui led the crowd and shouted, "Welcome home, master. It's been hard on everyone at home this year. I'll treat everyone to a drink tonight. It's such a cold day. You don't have to stand here to welcome us." Gu Qingrui looked at Zhou Ying and their daughter after he finished speaking. "It's fine. We only came out after you left the palace." Zhou Ying pointed at the brazier. "You've been away for almost a year. Step over the brazier and come on in." Gu Qingrui was stunned momentarily, but he still stepped over the brazier. "Daddy, Daddy, hug." As soon as he entered, Guogua immediately stretched out her arm to him impatiently. Chapter 865 Dinner Party. My Guogua has grown taller again. Let daddy see if she has gained weight too. Gu Qingrui picked her up and teased her. Not fat. Guoguo pinched his face. Yes, she's not fat, just heavy. Gu Qingrui smiled. After returning home, Gu Qingrui drank a cup of tea and ate 2 pastries. He took his new clothes and went to take a bath. Zhou remembered Gu Shengruo's cravings and asked Qiu Xiang to hurry to the market and buy a pig and 2 sheep. After some preparation, Zhou decided to roast it, as it was convenient for everyone to sit together and talk. Of course, most of the remaining pork was marinated and prepared into cold dishes. She also readied some peanuts, celery, carrots, lotus roots, yuba, fungus, tremella, yellow flowers, and so on. She mixed them with a large number of cold dishes. When Gu Qingrui came out with Guoguo again, everyone was already busy preparing dinner. Zhou turned her head and asked, "Let's see. Is there anything else you want to eat? If there is, tell me quickly." "That's good enough, but do we have fish at home? I haven't eaten fish in a long time. There seems to be a small yellow croaker. I'll go take a look." Zhou turned around and walked toward the storeroom. On the way, she called 2 servants to help. Sure enough, there were quite a few in the storeroom. Zhou had asked them to carry out 100 pounds of the small yellow croakers she had caught from her interspace. She looked around and found a few big bases. It was just nice for everyone to share. As for the wine, it was ordinary white wine. She had previously used rice, wheat, glutinous rice, and corn to brew it with her interspace's winemaking machine. Although it was not as good as the wine from her previous life, it was still quite good to drink. In the evening, Gu Qingrui and everyone had a hearty meal. Needless to say, people of this era were quite gluttonous. Everyone was still not filled after 2 sheep, 1 pig, and a large number of cold dishes and small yellow croakers, especially those 100 guards. In the end, she could only roast more steamed buns. When everyone was done, Guoguo had already fallen asleep with Mrs. Lin. After Zhou helped Gu Qingrui, who was drunk and groggy, to the bed, she washed up briefly and brought him into her interspace. After settling him down, she started to get busy. She was busy until dawn and brought Gu Qingrui out of her interspace. The next morning, Zhou was still in a daze when someone pinched her nose and woke her up. She opened her eyes and saw Guoguo. She was stunned for a moment. "Guoguo, what are you doing? Mommy is still sleepy. Go play by yourself. I'm hungry. I want to eat." Guoguo pleaded as she pushed Zhou back and forth. "Go find Nanny." "No, I want to eat Mother's egg pancakes. Others don't taste good." Zhou sighed after hearing that. Why did she suddenly regret giving birth to this little thing? However, when she looked into Guoguo's big eyes, which were filled with anticipation, she could only get up reluctantly. After washing up, she brought her to the kitchen and made egg pancakes. She made a few more and gave her one first. "All right, go eat. Remember to have a bowl of millet porridge." "Got it." Guoguo ate her favorite pancakes and immediately followed Mrs. Lin obediently. Zhou resigned herself to her fate and made the rest of the breakfast. Gu Qingrui had just woken up when she re-entered her room. He saw her panda eyes and asked, "What happened? Why didn't you sleep more?" "It's all because of your good daughter. She wanted to eat pancakes so early in the morning and woke me up. Hurry up and wash your hands. It's time for breakfast." After Zhou said that, she scooped out the millet porridge for the 2 of them and placed it on the table. Chapter 866 Giving the New Year Gifts. "Thank you for your hard work," Gu Qingrui said after he sat down. "You're welcome. By the way, after you come back this time, you don't have to run around anymore, right? No, but the emperor wants me to train some more surgeons. But when the time comes, I can just summon them to the capital for training. That's good. Guagua is growing every day. If you continue running around, you'll miss her growth. Indeed, she has changed a lot this year. Not only has she grown taller, but her words have also become more eloquent. She can run fast now. Carrying her is even more tiring than the next day. I'll take her back later. The two of them chatted while eating. Soon, the meal was over. After the meal, Gu Qingrui said, "During the morning court session today, the emperor rewarded me according to my merits. He rewarded me with 10,000 taels of silver and a hot spring manor. You also got a set of gold, jade jewelry, and 10 bolts of cloth." "Mine?" Zhou Ying asked in surprise. "It's a meritorious deed to catch spies." He even gave less than expected. "That's good. To be honest, I've been envious of other people's hot springs for a long time. Now that we have one too, I'll bring Guagua to the hot springs later." "No problem, I will definitely bring you two there before the new year." Gu Qingrui nodded in agreement. After that, the two chatted for a while. Once they received the reward, Gu Qingrui changed into his regular clothes and went to his hospital. Zhou Ying wanted to take a nap, but she couldn't. Thus, she brought Guagua to deliver the New Year's gift to the Zhou family. However, she prepared 2 more jars of 20 pounds of home-brewed white wine before she left. As soon as she arrived at the entrance of the Zhou family's residence, she saw many people coming and going, primarily matchmakers. Zhou Ying waited outside for a while until there were fewer people before she entered the residence with her gifts. She told Niu Lirong to talk it over with the Zhou residence's steward while she brought Guagua to the central courtyard. "Could those people be here to matchmake Brother Huayu?" she asked the tired Mingyu when they met up. "Exactly. They are here to matchmake my brother. There are even some who are matchmaking for my father-in-law. I'm exhausted. It looks like Brother Huayu is quite popular. Is there anyone suitable?" Mingyu shook her head. "I don't know. I just need to collect the list of women, and the rest is up to my father-in-law and brother." Zhou Ying saw that Guagua couldn't sit still and nodded. "That's true. Oh right, where's Zhuang? His father carried him to the front courtyard, as his father is looking forward to meeting him." "That's normal. Oh. That's his eldest grandson. But now that they're back, you can relax a little." "I hope so. By the way, are you here to give me a gift?" "That's right. The sooner I send it, the sooner it'll be at ease." "Nice. Give me another 100 pounds of wine later." "There's no more." "No more." "That's right, there's no more. Everyone ordered more last year, even after Wed more or less increased the quantity. There's no more left. Each and every one of them is more scheming than the others. If you need it for something, I can give you my share." "No need for that. It's just that last night, my father-in-law and eldest brother had the wine, and I saw that they liked it, so I wanted to add more to my order. If there's no more, then forget it." "It's fine. I'll give you 20 pounds more later." "Thank you." Just as Mingyu thanked Zhou Ying, a servant girl came to report to her. "Madam, another matchmaker has come to visit." "Oh my God, this is endless. Just tell them that I have guests and that they can come another day." "Don't. You shouldn't offend a matchmaker, go out and meet her." "I have nothing to do here, so I'll go back first." Zhou Ying stood up and prepared to leave. Chapter 867 Hot Springs Manor 1. When Mingyu heard her say this, she did not try to persuade her to stay because she knew how talkative a matchmaker could be. If anything bad were to spread, it would be quite detrimental to her eldest uncle's marriage. She got up and sent her out. Why don't I come to your house for a gathering soon? No problem. Take care. Showing nodded. However, she felt Mingyu would not have the chance before the new year. The Zhou family was a newly promoted noble family, and it happened to be the end of the year. There would definitely be many people who would come to curry favor with them, so they would have very few opportunities to go out. Zhou Ying's guess was right. She had been busy for half a month and sent all the gifts to the various prefectures. However, Mingyu and her family did not come to visit, so she asked Kuehua to bring them the 20 pounds of wine she had promised. At night, after dinner, Gu Qingrui asked, "Babe, have you delivered all the gifts?" "So far, what should be given has been given. I'm not sure if anyone will come to give gifts after that." "What's the matter?" Showing asked. "It's fine. I'm almost done with my work at the hospital. If you finish your work, we can go to the hot spring manor and stay for a few days. We can also officially register it under our name. Then it's settled. We'll come back home after playing there for a few days. It's just in time for the year-end accounting." "Okay, I'll arrange it later. We'll leave early tomorrow morning." "Alright, by the way, don't bring Lin Etienne when we leave this time. Let him accompany Shizhu." "Got it. I'll listen to you." After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he arranged for the carriages and manpower. Meanwhile, Zhou prepared the clothes and toiletries for the family of 3. She also asked Kuehua to prepare 2 blankets. She also requested that Mrs. Lin pack up Guoguo's things. The next morning, the family of 3 brought Niu Lirong, Mrs. Lin, Lin Yifan, and 10 other guards to the hot spring manor. When it was almost noon, the group finally arrived at the manor. After entering, Gu Qingrui called the head of the manor over and asked, "Head who, right? Do the people in the manor already know about the change of ownership?" "Master, we received the notice from the government half a month ago." "Emichim, go and inform them they can leave immediately after signing up for the next 2 days if they want to leave. If they stay, they have to be absolutely loyal to the Gu family. Otherwise, once I find out, they won't be forgiven. Don't worry, all the people with status in the manor have been sold. Those who are left behind, other than the original fringe personnel, are sent by the government to guard the manor like me." "I know, but it's still better to ask." "Understood." Head who nodded. "Good, our family of 3 will be staying here for 5 to 6 days. Arrange for food and accommodation." "Yes, I'll bring you guys to settle down first." Head who answered and led them into the central courtyard, a large 3-entry residence, and said, "This house may look like it only has 3 entrances, but it's not small. The second and third entrances have 3 small courtyards side by side. Each courtyard contains 3 main rooms and 3 independent rooms. The west courtyard in the backyard also has a stable and a fodder room. There are also 8 rooms and a reception room in the middle." "How many people are there in the manor?" Gu Qingrui asked. "Except for a small family of 6, there are 10 manservants. When they have nothing to do, they would do some farm work, such as planting vegetables, caring for the fruit trees on the mountain, and raising the fish in the pond. By the way, the water in the pond is running water, so the fish in it is delicious. In addition, there are also 5 old maids who usually clean the house. If the fields are busy, they will also go to the fields to help." Chapter 868 Hot Springs Manor, 2. In other words, there are a total of 21 people. "What is your family responsible for?" Gu Qingrui asked. "My wife and daughter-in-law are in charge of the kitchen. My daughter is 16 this year and usually takes care of my granddaughter, who is less than 3 years old, at home. If you need it, she can help master and mistress run errands and be a servant girl. As for my son, he's a good farmer, so he's the one who does all the work in the fields. How big is this manor? Less than 30 acres, except for this house and the 2 acres of empty land behind it where vegetables are planted. There's also a pond of about 10 acres. There are fish and lotus roots in it, with the rest being a mountainous area with peach trees planted all over. The peaches in our village are big and sweet, a rare treat of this place. Some chickens, ducks, and geese also live in the forest. When spring comes, the pond will thaw, and the ducks and geese will enter the water. It will be much livelier then. Head-Who led them into the second entrance as he introduced the place. The second entrance was newly renovated when we came here. Of course, it was just reinforced and repainted. If you have any special requests, you can tell us. We can clean up and refurbish the place this coming spring. Let's take a look first. Gu Qingrui nodded, pushed the door open, and walked in. Although there was a brazier in the room, it was still cold. It was so cold that his face was nearly frozen. The structure of the place was simple. There was 1 big room and 2 small rooms, not even a storeroom. By the way, where is the hot spring? Gu Qingrui asked. At the back of here and beside the vegetable field with 2 separate courtyards. The interior is made of stone and is very clean. Okay, you go ahead with your work. We can settle the rest ourselves. What would you like to eat for lunch? Stewed goose. I haven't eaten goose meat in a long time, and you can decide the rest. Yes, then I will take my leave. After Head-Who bowed, he turned around and walked out. After he left, Gu Qingrui checked the inside and outside of the house. After confirming there were no problems, he asked Niu Lirong and Mrs. Lin to help clean up the house. I'm cold. Guogua shrunk her neck and said. There are no heaters here, so it's a little cold. You have to wear more clothes. After Zhouing finished speaking, she asked Mrs. Lin to take out Guoguo's sheepskin cloak and put it on her. She also asked Niu Lirong to get 1 more brazier and more charcoal and place them in each room. For the next few days, you can sleep in the west courtyard. I'm afraid the wing rooms here are too cold. Yes. Niu Lirong and Mrs. Lin responded, turned around, and tidied their rooms. It looks like I'll have to prepare floor heating next year. Or else, I'll have to build a brick bed, or it'll be too cold in the middle of winter. Gu Qingrui commented. Yeah, let's make do for now. Zhouing echoed. You keep an eye on Guogua. I'll see if there's anything else I need to clean up. After saying that, she walked into the other rooms. As expected, they were even colder. If they relied on the brazier alone, she knew it would not be able to warm everyone up in such a short time. She took out a set of batteries and a set of electric heaters from her inner space and placed them in a corner. When they were almost done cleaning, the food was ready. There was a plate of stewed goose, a braised carp that weighed about 2 pounds, a plate of fried eggs with mushrooms, a plate of fried garlic with bacon, a plate of fried coal with minced garlic, and finally, a plate of fried peanuts with cold spinach. There was also mushroom soup and some small flour rolls. Master, mistress, is there anything else you need? Mrs. Hu asked after serving all the dishes. Chapter 869 Hot Springs Manor, 3, That's enough. Did you cook all these dishes? Zhouing asked. Because these dishes looked neat and smelled good, it was likely that the taste was great too. I cooked the dishes, and my daughter-in-law made the flour rolls. Zhouing nodded and said, they look lovely. You may leave. Make sure the food for the guards is decent too. At the very least, make sure that there's a meat and a vegetable dish each. I understand. Mrs. Hu responded and turned to walk out. After she left, Zhouing called Niu Lirong and Mrs. Lin over. There's a lot of food here. Let's eat together. The two of them glanced at Gu Qingrui after hearing that. Seeing that he did not object, they sat down. However, the two of them did not eat much at first. Instead, they only took care of the family of three. Only when they were almost done eating did they officially start eating. Zhou put down her chopsticks and nodded with satisfaction. Although the dishes were not as delicious as those of the restaurant because of the seasoning, they were still great. At the very least, they tasted better than those cooked by Xiaoxiang and Dongxiang. Why, are you interested in her cooking skills? Gu Qingrui asked. It's better that we don't separate their family. Zhou shook her head. Gu Qingrui knew after listening that although Mrs. Hu's cooking was not bad, it was not to the extent that she was worth the effort to transfer her. He looked at Niu Lirong and said, ask for more charcoal from Mrs. Hu later for our braziers. Understood. Niu Lirong nodded. She and Mrs. Lin cleared the table and sent the bowls and chopsticks to the kitchen. Meanwhile, Zhou and Gu Qingrui brought Guogua out of the courtyard. Coincidentally, Gu Qingrui heard the sound of a hen laying eggs. He looked at Guogua and asked, let's go see the goose, shall we? Goose, what is it? Guogua turned her head and asked. You'll know when you see it. Gooses are amazing. Let's go for a walk. Gu Qingrui looked at Zhou after he finished speaking. Yes. Zhou responded and wrapped Guogua tightly to avoid her getting a cold. Soon, the family of three walked up the mountain. As soon as they entered the mountain forest, they saw chickens, ducks, and geese leisurely looking for food. When the goose saw them coming, it immediately flapped its wings and pounced toward them. After Gu Qingrui and Zhou kicked one away, Zhou saw a bamboo pole at the side, so she picked it up and chased the goose away. At the same time, Gu Qingrui pointed at the big goose and said to Guogua, did you see that? That white one is the big goose. It's fierce. It wanted to bite us just now. The gray ones with flat beaks were ducks. They were the ones who made your favorite roast duck. As for the bright one, chicken, big rooster. Guogua answered. Yes, it's a rooster. Tell me, what's the difference between a rooster and a hen? The rooster is beautiful and big. It has a red hat on its head. Smart girl. Take a good look at the similarities and differences between geese and ducks. The goose is big and white. The duck is ugly and has a flat mouth. Awesome, you remembered it so quickly. Take a good look again and see what the similarities are. Gu Qingrui said. Guogua looked at them seriously for a long time before saying, their legs are different from the roosters. Right, their claws are webbed. It's because they can swim. What is swimming? Swimming is moving in the water so that you don't sink. How do I not sink? Daddy will teach you tomorrow, okay? Gu Qingrui asked. Why can't chickens swim? Why is the duck the ugliest? Roast duck is obviously the most delicious. Why don't geese get angry at chickens and ducks? Chapter 870 Hot Springs Manor, 4. As the questions continued, Gu Qingrui was finally stumped. Zhou was amused, but she had no intention of helping him answer them. At this age, Guogua was curious about everything. She would ask whatever she found and bombard everyone with questions. It seemed like she would have to find the 100,000 Whys book and read it properly for her. Woof woof. The sound of a dog barking was heard. Zhuang. Guogua ran over and shouted. Gu Qingrui was shocked when he saw the dog pouncing at Guogua. He lifted her up and kicked the dog to the side. The dog squeaked twice. After getting up, it continued to bark at them but did not go forward. Gu Qingrui looked at Guogua and said, look carefully. This isn't Zhuang. Zhuang is in another manner. Guoguo looked at the dog carefully for a while. She finally realized the dog was much taller and stronger than Zhuang. However, it was not as good-looking as Zhuang. She huffed, ugly. Yes, it's not as good-looking as Zhuang. Gu Qingrui smiled. Hu Ming. Greetings, Master, Mistress, and Mississippi. At this moment, a burly man in his 20s jogged over and stopped when he saw them. You are the son of Head Hu, right? Gu Qingrui asked. Yes, I am. You are. Oh, I'm here to pick some eggs and feed the chickens some water and food. Hu Ming said. How many chickens, ducks, and geese are fed here? 500 chickens and ducks, and 200 geese. However, there are not many eggs being laid at this time. We can't even collect a total of 50 eggs a day. It's normal, but I think it should be enough. Gu Qingrui then asked him about the situation at the manor. On the other end, Zhou saw no danger after they chatted, so she walked up the mountain. She looked at the peach trees and saw they had been neatly trimmed. There was even a layer of straw wrapped around the trees. Obviously, they were well versed in the field, so she nodded in satisfaction. When she reached the top of the manor, she encountered a wall. Spreading out her divine sense, Zhou saw that the mountain stretched further up, and it was endless and deep. At this time, young masters were hunting inside, so there was not much prey left inside the forest, and it was very safe. After a while, Gu Qingrui walked over with Guoguo in his arms. This manor is really a good place to escape the heat in summer. Yeah, but we have to prepare mosquito-repellent incense. Zhou nodded in agreement. Outside. Guoguo pointed at the wall and wanted to walk out. It's cold outside, Zhou said with a smile. And there are wolves that will eat children. Guoguo was so frightened that she immediately retracted her hand. Gu Qingrui looked at Zhou Ying's teasing expression and knew she was lying. He did not expose her and just said, let's go. Daddy will bring you to catch fish. Fish. Guoguo's eyes immediately lit up. Yes, catch fish. Gu Qingrui smiled and carried her down the mountain. Zhou chased after them. When they reached the bottom, they found a small boat not far away with all kinds of fishing nets. Zhou brought some fishing nets with her and walked to the father and daughter's side, passing the fishing net to Gu Qingrui. This is for you. I'll look after Guoguo. After Gu Qingrui took it, he looked at Guoguo and decided not to let her participate. If she accidentally fell in, his heart would ache for her. He found a few large stones on the side and threw them at the gap in the frozen pond that had been smashed. After smashing it 10 times, the hole was finally opened. A moment later, many fish spewed up like a fountain, causing Guoguo to squeak excitedly. Chapter 871 Hot Springs Manor 5. Guoguo struggled to get down, but Zhou quickly hugged her tightly and said, just watch. It's cold down there, so you can't go down. Guoguo shook her little body unhappily and clapped her hands again as she watched Gu Qingrui catch the fish. In the end, Gu Qingrui only got 2 large grass carp and a few small fish that had frozen to death. Guoguo, how do you want to eat fish today? He asked. Fish. Yeah, how do you plan to eat it? Gu Qingrui asked. Guoguo was in a dilemma and turned her head to look at Zhou. Except for the fish you picked out for her today, Zhou said with a smile. I usually make fish balls for her. I'm afraid she doesn't know how else to eat them. I see. So let's eat fish balls tonight, with some winter melon slices and vermicelli. Gu Qingrui said. Bowl. Guoguo immediately clapped her hands with a smile. Yes, bowl. Let's go back and make fish balls. After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he picked up the fish and returned with them. When they returned, the two brought Guogua to make fish balls. When they were almost done, Showing boiled the remaining fish heads, bones, tails, and other scraps into a fish soup. She planned to make a big pot for everyone. Mrs. Hu smelled the soup, ran over and saw them busy in the kitchen. She hurriedly said, "Master, mistress, why are you doing it yourself? Just let me do it." "No need. I have nothing to do anyway. It's good to take care of the children and do some work." Showing replied. She added, "I've made the fish balls and soup. Later at night, you can stir-fry 2 more vegetable dishes and make some pancakes." "Ah, I will knead the dough now." Mrs. Hu replied and got busy. Mrs. Hu left the kitchen, went out, and called Mrs. Sun over. The two of them soon got busy cooking pancakes. On the other end, after Gu Qingrui prepared the fish balls, he brought Guogua back to the house. After dinner, Head Hu came in with 2 account books in the evening. "Master, these are the account books of the manor. Please take a look. I also have a question from the people you asked to stay or leave. If they leave, do they need to pay for their freedom? Is there anyone who wants to leave?" "Yes, there is a manservant. He wants to go home." "No need. Just give him his contract and let him go to the government office to change his household registration. Master is benevolent. I will tell him now. Go and tell everyone that this is their only chance. Those who choose to stay must pledge their loyalty to the Gu residents." "Yes." Head Hu responded and turned to leave. After he left, Gu Qingrui glanced at the account books and realized that the main profit of the manor was peaches. Fish, chickens, ducks, and geese were also raised on the mountain, but their profits were low. It seemed that this was a manor built specifically for vacations. Then, he let Showing take a look. The two of them drank a pot of tea and washed up briefly before bringing Guogua back to her room. The temperature in the room had already risen, so Guogua also became energetic. The two of them played with her for a while. After she fell asleep, Gu Qingrui locked the door and windows, and the two of them brought Guogua into the inner space. As soon as she entered the space, Showing received a large amount of incense and countless prayers. After putting Guogua into the villa, she immediately walked to the storeroom to check. She did not expect the prayers to be from the people of the Western continent, including their new king. It was almost the new year, but their current rations could only keep people from starving to death, so they were praying for food. Oh, right, there were also prayers for rain. Most of the areas on the Western continent had not had rain for half a year. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.